Samantha. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? So glad to have you here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here.
Um, so I'm just going to jump into questions because I know that you're super busy and have loads of things going on. But thank you so much for being here and for wanting to meet Gen Zs and millennials where we are on social media. I think that's super important. Yeah.
I
Uh,
agree,
so,
and thank you for the opportunity.
oh, no problem. Okay, so one of the questions that like I feel like the last couple of years there's been a elevation of the collective consciousness and understanding of issues. What is something that you unlearned this past year, 2 years during the pandemic, and how will you use this new information to help make decisions going forward?
Well, thanks for the question. And when I think about it, I don't think about it so much as unlearned, but maybe relearned. Lots of reflection over the time of the pandemic. Lots of circumstances that were, that were very challenging for lots of different people. And as a leader, that of course impacted the work that I do, the work that the MPPs that were elected with the NDP do, and making sure that we were not only doing the work we needed to do to support people in our ridings, our constituents, the families, the community members, the young people, but also support each other. And so maybe if there's something I relearned is that every space that we're in, we need to support each other as well as all of the other roles we have in supporting other people. So when it's your coworkers and your peers, and in our case, a political party, and not only the MPPs but also our staff, it was really about not forgetting that as we do our work out there, we have to do our work in here and
Mm-hmm.
make sure we're taking care of each other.
Yeah, I think that's a great like start to that. I feel like one of the things that I feel like we've all come to understand uh, and better realize and accept is how our entire system, our framing of government, and the country as a whole is rooted within a colonial framework, which is inherently centering white people, but also upholds white supremacy. Um, as a woman of color, that sucks to know that, to have to
Yeah.
live with that, and I say that from a position of like relative privilege. Um, what are you doing to keep understanding the effects of white supremacy on communities of color and other marginalized folk, as well as actively working to dismantle that status quo of white supremacy in our mindsets, in the way that we approach things, in the way that we do things. Um, yeah.
Well, I guess one of the things that I have had the privilege of doing is supporting people to get engaged politically, and open the space and welcome people into the space, to be able to have their voices be part of all of the decision making and the discussions that we have. And so in these last 4 years, I had the privilege of being a leader of a caucus at Queen's Park that was not only 50% women, but a number of LGBTQ IA plus people, two-spirited people, Indigenous people, the first First Nations person ever to be elected, young people, people from every ethnocultural and faith background, people that represented every part of Ontario. And what that helped us do was in every conversation that we had, be reflective of all of the voices around our table, and what that brought to uh, our priorities, I guess is the best way to put it, the way that we responded to what was happening with COVID, particularly. I mean, fighting for example, access to vaccines, particularly in the hotspots communities, making sure that frontline racialized workers were getting the attention that they needed, whether that was in terms of access to healthcare, whether that was in terms of access to vaccines, to PPE, because we have those voices around our table. So
Mm.
I've really valued and I'm proud of the work that we've done as a political party, frankly, to not only have people as names on ballots, but actually get people elected. to be part of the discourse and the solutions, because that's who has the lived experience, and that's who understands very, very clearly how any, position we take or initiative that we put forward impacts people.
I think that's really awesome. Your party is quite diverse, and I think that it's really awesome to have members of different experience who have different lived experiences coming around the table. But there's a difference between having a seat in the table and having decision-making power, having the ability to feel like you can challenge your party leader if you disagree with them, or not have to feel like you have to fit in to belong. Specifically, often people from marginalized communities feel like they have to code switch in areas, or have to center experiences that aren't reflective of their own lived experiences. What do you do within your own party to create an environment that allows people to show up fully, and like respectfully challenge your opinions or your decisions around what should be done next?
So we do have very vigorous discussion when it comes to our caucus meetings. We provide that space, but the other thing that I think is important is that so we have a Black Caucus, for example, the first Black Caucus ever in the province of Ontario, and I'm not sure about other provinces, but and so making sure that space, or those folks who wanted to carve out that space and take that power and have that collective voice, were supported in doing so. And given what that we have all kinds of different voices around our table, making sure that is not going anywhere, if you know what I mean, that we continue to support them. And then when we have things like, I'll give a little example, we talked about business supports, for example, with COVID. We were trying to push the government for small business supports, but what we were also doing was making sure that there was an acknowledgement about, in particular, Black small businesses, Black operated and owned small businesses, and barriers to things like access to capital, and other supports that they would need, that was going to be different from what other business people might be in need of. And so taking that time to go to Little Jamaica with Jill Andrew and having those conversations with business owners was extremely important. So it's not symbolic. It's got to be built in and baked into all of the work that we do. And it's not just our MPPs, it's our staff, it's our party, it's our party executive, it's our party staff. So it's every part of our organization, and every part of our decision making needs to be informed by those lived experiences, and the space needs to consistently be open and safe.
And when you're doing the work that you do, how do you work to identify your own biases, to ensure that the decisions that you're making hear that feedback, but also it's hard to check yourself when you're making a decision, or when you're working on relearning or unlearning things. So in what ways do you work to identify that? And
well, there's a couple of things, and I think first and foremost, it's about checking your ego at the door, kind of a thing. And so it's as things become as I obtain new knowledge, or I receive new feedback, or I observe circumstances that I have to. I guess the thing is, be engaged. Like, pay attention, be engaged. Don't shut down, and always do what you need to do to be questioning yourself and responding when you're being questioned, because that's the opportunity for that growth, and that's the opportunity for those kinds of changes to take root. If you're not able to do that, then you really you cannot succeed in your own growth, but also in the the growth of your organization and or of your value system. I mean, I just think that people shut down often. They feel threatened and they shut down, and I think that's the worst thing that can happen. Sorry, I'm waving to some people walking by the Glad Day Bookshop in Toronto.
No worries. I was gonna say I love the background. I love that there are just books behind you. That's like amazing. Yeah, I think something that like a little bit more specifically going into this election, I like am terrified. I've had like straight up nightmares about Doug Ford winning. It's not even like nightmares where like maybe at the end of it there's a happy ending. No, just like terrible nightmares. Is there of like if he wins a minority government, what's the NDP's plan?
Well, first of all, we're going to do everything we can to prevent that from happening, and we're fighting each and every day on every front possible to show people that if we come together this time, if we come together, we can stop Doug Ford, we can stop the cuts, and we can stop the pain that Conservatives always bring to everyday Ontarians. There's a lot at stake in this election, and I think that's where your nightmares are coming from. That's where my nightmares are coming from too. And we just don't want to see another Doug Ford government continue to drag us backwards on so many fronts. And so that's why I'm saying to people, I'm appealing to people, this time the party that has the best shot at defeating Doug Ford, this time it's the NDP. We're strong, we're ready. We have an amazing team that we've already talked about, and those are only the folks that are running for re-election. Our candidate team is 80% of our candidate team are people who are equity deserving folks. That's pretty important.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of reflecting on the early part of our conversation, this is how you make decisions that that are more about people where they're at and who they are and all of their all of their various identities. There's just so much that we can do to really be thoughtful about that in the way we develop policy and operate this province. But we'll never get there with the likes of Doug Ford ever. So I'm encouraging people, but I can tell you for certain that I will not ever, I could never ever support a Doug Ford government. So my job between now and Thursday is to make sure there is no iteration whatsoever of a Doug Ford government. And I'm feeling a lot of change on the ground right now. These last couple of days, people are really starting to understand, not even understand, get engaged, I guess, really starting to get engaged in the power that the vote will give us if we come together to defeat Doug Ford. And that's exciting. And I'm just going to stay focused on that for the next couple of days. But I would not ever support.
I'm so glad you said that. I didn't think you would either, but I wanted to ask anyways. One of the things that, okay, and I should preface this, is that I'm not someone who's like the expert on Canadian politics or Ontario politics. I'm just like a very concerned individual about the future of our country. Something that I thought would have been really cool to see is some sort of like joint, coming together with the Liberals, the NDP and the Greens to create like because we have a first past the post system, to create some sort of coalition or some sort of community that goes into this election. So our options are progress or like we're effed with Ford situation.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. So
okay,
why
so let me just say this. One of the things that has to happen first is people have to be given the opportunity to cast their ballot. Right now, and for this entire campaign, in fact, we've been going after Conservative seats. I mean, I've been in Conservative ridings after Conservative ridings after Conservative ridings. I'm going to head up to Ottawa later today at Conservative riding, Peterborough, a Conservative riding. I've been focusing on Conservative ridings because that's who we need to defeat. We need to defeat Doug Ford. I can't say that about the other two parties. That's not what they've been doing, but they have their own reasons for the way they campaign. What I know for sure is that New Democrats can unseat Conservatives, and that's why I'm putting all my energy and focus into that. And then the people will make their decision on Thursday. You're right, that's going to happen, and then that's when we see what they decided. And if there are opportunities to make sure that Doug Ford does not become the premier of this province, I'm expecting, I'm hoping, and I'm working towards becoming the premier of this province on Thursday. When people have had their say, we'll do everything we can to make sure that Doug Ford is not getting another chance to bring more cuts to Ontario. We have to stop those cuts, and we have to make sure that that we're doing the things that people need to see, that give people hope, that we can fix all the things that are broken. And whether that's the affordability of everyday life, whether that's making sure people can afford the rent, whether they can afford to pay the bills, whether they can have a job that pays them enough to pay the bills, whether that's our healthcare system, our education system. I mean, all these things have been broken for a very long time. And with due respect, a lot of the things that are broken were broken by the Liberals. Doug Ford's been in for 4 years, and yes, he made things much worse, but we had hallway medicine with the Liberals. They cut and squeezed our healthcare system. I was there. I watched it. Long-term care was in crisis for years and years. And then COVID, then Ford started cutting when he got elected. And then COVID hit, and things got much, much worse. But long-term care was on its knees. We could do so much better, and we need to do so much better. I don't know that we can trust the very people that broke some of these things to fix them in the future. That's why I'm saying to folks, vote NDP. Let's come together this time.
And as you sort of go into this final stretch of days, what is something that you wish more people would be doing? Voting turnout is not always the greatest. Do you have any tips on how to encourage people to show up to the polls and why they should vote?
There's a couple of things. So first of all, I get it. People watch liberals, conservatives, and nothing changes. Life just keeps getting harder for people. And the things that we care most about, the things that we need to support us to build great lives here, continue to be eroded over time. So people become cynical and they give up. They don't see themselves in the decisions that are being made by governments, and so I understand that cynicism. But it's for me, it's troubling because because as people tune out or decide not to vote because they don't ever see any change, then that just erodes even more our democracy and our opportunity to make change happen. And so we're encouraging people to go to a link called howuvote.ca. Or is it how you vote or how to vote? Is how you vote? Howuvote.ca. I went on it myself just to try it out, and it's really cool. You put your postal code in, and it gives you, where you vote, what your polling station is, how you vote, what you need to bring if you don't have your voter's card. Maybe you moved recently and you don't have the the ID that you need from the voter's card. What you bring with you to be able to vote. I really hope that this time around, when people see what's at stake and they really think about how can we make sure that the things that are broken, that matter to most of us, can be fixed, that they get out to vote. It's extremely important. There's a lot at stake.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I know that you only had a little bit of time today to squeeze this in, so I don't want to overextend it, but thank you so much for being here, for talking to young people where they are. The goal should be defeating Doug Ford, and that means each and every one of us who can vote should show up to the polls and vote. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, thank you, first of all, for inviting me to be here. I've enjoyed the conversation. I guess if there's one last piece I'd like to say is this: don't give up. There's hope. There's hope that we can change the things that matter most, that we can fix what matters most to people. And I want young people particularly to know that when you have your voice heard, when you go to the ballot box, when you vote, and at a time like this, as the pandemic has ended and so many things have shifted, we need to focus on bringing hope back to young people. And our platform has a lot in it that helps with things like your prescription drug costs, dental care, mental health with your OHIP card, not your credit card. These are things that take a financial burden off of people, but also provide some of the real expensive services that people need to stay healthy and to be well, so that you can have some hope at building the rest of your lives. So there is hope. We're trying to provide that hope, particularly for young people, whether it's rent, whether it's affording your own home, whether it's healthcare. We know that it's tough these days, and we want to assure you that with a vote for the NDP, you can have hope that we can fix these things.
Thank you so much, and
thank you.
we'll be posting this later tonight for anyone who missed it, and on YouTube as well for people who want to share it around. So thank you so much, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks. You did the same, Samantha. Thank you so much.